Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to a special edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Scarlet Fu. Michael Barr and Damian Sassower will be back next week. On today's show, we highlight some of our favorite conversations from Bloomberg Power Players, a live event at our headquarters here in New York, hosted by Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly earlier this month. The event was a series of panels with big names in the industry. We'll take a listen to discussions with former NBA star, Atlanta Hawks co-owner, and Team USA basketball managing director Grant Hill, fresh off of this summer's gold medal win in Paris.
For us, it was gold or bust.
Yeah.
And you really felt that. You felt that pressure, particularly in the medal rounds. And it was unlike any pressure I've ever experienced.
We'll also hear from first-time Olympian Steph Curry, whose electric shooting helped Team USA bring home the gold.
It still hasn't sunk in, I ain't gonna lie. It's just one of those things that, you did what the moment called for. Thankfully, all those shots went in. And to silence the crowd was special. That last one, I don't even know how to explain it.
Plus, we share conversations with some of the athletes who headed over to the trading floor at Canter Fitzgerald this past week. It's part of an annual day of fundraising to mark the anniversary of the September 11th attacks. That's on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But we start at Power Players New York and hear from two important names in the world of women's soccer. National Women's Soccer League Commissioner Jessica Berman and Gotham FC and U.S. Women's National Team forward Midge Purce. They sat down for a discussion on how women's soccer is growing and Purce's new reality series, The Off Season. Let's take a listen to their conversation, moderated by Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo, starting with Berman's thoughts on why the NWSL decided to do away with a traditional draft.
There's a few things that made our decision more obvious that may or may not be relevant to the unique challenges of any individual sport. And I do think this is like a very specific analysis that has to take into account the culture of the game more broadly, but also like your unique challenges for your players. So the short answer is I don't know. There's really two things that for us were meaningfully different. The first is that if you look at the NFL or the NBA and you balance the trade-offs and the opportunities that it creates, those leagues have historically benefited from someone else investing in your player development pathway. They are able to put the wrapper on top of the draft that someone else is funding and celebrate all these players who become stars during their years of college. And so coming into the draft, everybody's like, who those players are, because there is an entire monetization and marketing engine behind the NCAA for men's football and men's basketball. We don't have that in soccer. So in the risk-reward analysis of those obstacles that we imposed on ourselves, possibly in some sports for good reason, it makes the weighing of the pros and cons a lot easier because our players come from everywhere. And it's a whole other topic of conversation why the college system doesn't actually serve us the way it needs to. And certainly it's fair to say, regardless of what you think of the player pathway in the NCAA for women's soccer, no one knows who those players are because there isn't a big monetization or marketing engine behind them. So that made it unique. I think it's also true to say, and if you look at the history of women's soccer, I often say when you close your eyes and think of greatness in this room as Americans who love sports and soccer, you would think of women first. And that is such a unique first mover advantage for us as we think about the growth of women's sports. It is also true that the rest of the world has woken up to soccer, women's soccer in particular, and we have competitors globally. And that requires a different level of innovation and thoughtfulness around the mechanisms by which we will be in a position to attract the top talent. And so we had to look in the mirror and ask ourselves some really tough questions about that again, I think make our decision make sense for us. And I think the third piece, which Midge alluded to, is that I do think for women it is different. It's this idea that, you know, we've grown up, and certainly I have, not through the same lens as an athlete, but grown up in a world where this is a society and a contract that was built for men. Our league, business environments, candidly, like even as a mom with a kid in school, when they're scheduling parent-teacher conferences, it was all built for men, or with the idea that a woman could pick up the pieces during the day because we don't work. And we have to disrupt that if we want for our sport to be able to be the actual best league in the world, not the best women's league, not the best soccer league, but literally the best league in the world. And we think we can actually do that. We just have to think a little bit differently about how we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Midge, when you're talking about this system and how to grow stars, you know, beyond the U.S. women's national team, that's a lot of what your show does, right? You're taking NWSL stars that aren't on the U.S. women's national team, other than yourself, you know, that you really wanted to showcase their stories. I mean, that says a lot. You know, why did you pick them specifically, and what else can we do to make sure that people know these players who are stars in this league that aren't on the U.S. national team?
Yeah, I'll answer that backwards. I think what we can do is reform the way industry approaches women's sports. And I think that the CBA is a big example of that, because the biggest problem is that everything has been extremely derivative of men's sports. It's been extremely derivative of the European model and what they do with clubs there. I mean, I'm in New York, New Jersey, and people call my jersey a kit. And I'm like, it's a jersey. This is the U.S. Yeah. So I think just like reframing and reshaping the way and the lens in which we view female athletes as its own original product and content machine would go a long way. And then in terms of just, do you mean like selecting the actual players who are in the house?
Yeah, I mean that. I mean, I'm assuming some of them are your friends, some of them.
Yeah, most of them are my friends. Yeah. I have played for a couple of clubs in the league, and so I've had the pleasure of just meeting a lot of women who play in this league, and it is honestly, it's unreal how many stars we have that people just don't know about. And I say stars in the sense where they're not just elite, high-level athletes who perform on the field extremely well week in and week out, but they have these stories that if anyone heard them, you would be in awe. And you would be so curious and bought into knowing what happens next in that story. Also, their personalities are just like, they just sell. And I'm just like, these brands, they don't see them. They don't see how authentically their stories, their brands, their personalities relate to different products, and how it would be so easy to sell anything through the smorgasbord, for lack of a better word, of women that you have here.
Do we have a premiere date?
We do, and so it's so funny. I told Vanessa on the call, I was like, we can announce the premiere date, and then I went back to Twitter, and they were like, please don't do that yet.
Jessica, I know like this was produced completely separate from the NWSL, but when we're talking about storytelling there, and how important that is for women's sports in general, you know, what are your thoughts on that and how it can propel the league forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge priority for us. We know that original content has served to catalyze the incredible growth of fandom, to both attract new fans as well as to move fans along on the journey to become less casual and more avid, and that's the way we're going to grow our business. Fortunately, we have these incredible media partners in CBS, Amazon, ION, and ESPN, and many of them are doing a ton of original content right now. I'll just give an example. On Scripps ION, they do an incredible focus feature story between every match on Saturday night. So they do a doubleheader every single Saturday, and between they select a deep dive story, and they're incredible. I totally agree with Midge. The stories are absolutely incredible. These women are so inspirational and relatable, and like, just listen to her. She's like, the way that they are, the sophistication with which they approach their careers on and off the pitch, how much they know, some of which is because they've had to educate themselves. And I hope we can hold on to the incredibleness of the culture of these athletes when this league is $1 billion valuation, because I do believe that a lot of what has driven the initiative and self-starter ways that these players tell stories and have their own social, and they're just like scrappy because they had to be, and it is serving us well, and I hope we can hold on to some of that as we continue to grow, because it is the unique value proposition we offer the marketplace that makes us differentiated from the men's sports. And yeah, we've just scratched the surface on the stories that we're going to tell. We have some exciting news, but we're not breaking it today. But
nobody wants to break news.
We are working
on
some very exciting original content that the league is developing that will be in market, and it's going to really help people to really, pick up the hood, understand more about our game, our players, our storylines off the pitch, but as importantly on the pitch. Mm-hmm. I often juxtapose the challenges between men's sports and women's sports because I lived NFL, NBA, NHL world, and we were always trying to tell stories about who they are as people, because all anybody wanted to talk about was the highlights. Mm-hmm. In women's sports, I find that everyone wants to talk about like friendships and like, oh, she's a mom, and all that's like really great, and I understand the point, I do, but I want them to be as excited to talk about literally like the rivalries, the stories about the player and how incredible she is. And by the way, cover the fact that these athletes are not diving and like they get tackled and they get right up and start running. And like you bring any group of people who are men's soccer fans from Europe who are like avid soccer fans at the core and heart of the technical respect for the game, and they come and watch an NWSL game and they're like, that's the best soccer I've ever seen. And so you just have to like really get over these biases that are just unfortunately like deep rooted about like, yeah, these women are incredible and they are the best soccer players in the world.
That was Jessica Berman, National Women's Soccer League Commissioner, and NWSL forward Midge Purce, who's also star of a new reality series on soccer, The Off Season. They were speaking with Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo at the Bloomberg Power Players Conference in New York earlier this month. Coming up, we hear more of our favorite conversations from that event, including from NBA superstar Steph Curry.
We're Team USA basketball, like we're supposed to win, but the competition has definitely gotten extremely tougher. There's from 1992, I think there was only 7 NBA players that they played against. No, obviously, they're a great team, but for us, we played against 67 or 69 NBA guys.
The stats. You're doing my job up here.
We knew what the challenges are going to be. Yeah.
I'm Scarlet Fu, and you're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Scarlet Fu. Michael Barr and Damian Sassower will be back next week. We're listening in on some of our favorite conversations from Bloomberg Power Players, a special event held live at our headquarters in New York this month, featuring panels and discussions with key names in the universe of sports. Our next conversation takes us back to Paris and the Summer Olympics with NBA superstar Steph Curry. In Paris, you'll recall, Curry won his first and potentially last Olympic gold medal. He spoke on stage next to Under Armour CEO Kevin Plank with Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo. They discussed the Olympics, his relationship with Under Armour, and more. Let's listen in, starting with his experience this summer in Paris. From Bloomberg Power Players New York, this is Steph Curry.
So it was my first Olympic experience, which was definitely worth the wait. It was crazy energy throughout the whole city. The build up to the gold medal game, playing against France in France. So the home crowd was definitely on their side for a while. It's the best experience because, and obviously in the NBA, there's such a build up in playoffs, a 7-game series, and after 82 games, this is a 6-game sprint, and it's basically like March Madness, one and done. And so that intensity, that anxiety, really, like to get it done, and for it to build up to that last 3 minutes for me was some storybook stuff, and it still hasn't sunk in. I ain't gonna lie, it's just one of those things that you did what the moment called for. Thankfully, all those shots went in, and to silence the crowd was special. That last one, I don't even know how to explain it. And to celebrate with those 12 guys. So it was definitely a great first and probably only experience.
Did you plan for it? Huh? Did you plan for it? Did you see it in your mind? You got that method actor kind of sit down as an athlete and visualize the win.
So if my joke has been, well, Anthony Edwards, he made a joke. He was like, I only showed up to Paris for the last 3 days because I saved all of my shots for the last 2 games. I didn't shoot the ball well the first 4. I think I only made like 5 threes and then ended up making 16 in a 2-game stretch. So I visualized that for sure. Yeah. Whenever the moment calls for it, I'm gonna shoot it. So. Yeah.
I mean, you're always in the clutch. I mean, I think we've all seen that enough to know that for sure. We had Grant Hill here, and he had talked about it. He had talked about the experience there, and he's obviously been in a similar situation. But he said, being the director of USA Basketball, and he said that was the most pressure he felt in his entire career. Do you feel that sentiment? I mean, Steve Kerr kind of alluded to the same kind of a moment too.
It's good for Grant to say that because he couldn't be out there on the court to do anything about it. Like his work was done once the team was selected. But as a player, there's a sense of relief because we're Team USA Basketball. Like we're supposed to win. But the competition has definitely gotten extremely tougher. There's from 1992, I think there was only 7 NBA players that they played against. No, obviously, they're a great team, but for us, we played against 67 or 69 NBA guys.
The stats. You're doing my job up here.
We knew what the challenges were going to be, and so for us to get it done, no matter how it looked, like we knew it was going to be tough. So the Serbia comeback was insane, and that was where the most going into that fourth quarter, the first time I actually thought like. We might not win if we don't figure this thing out. And to respond the way we did was special.
Yeah.
You prefer favorite or you prefer underdog?
I've always been.
You've been a favorite for a long time
Even
now.
if I'm the favorite, I'm still going to trick myself into thinking you're the underdog. That's just part of my DNA. So
that's that underrated mentality, right?
On brand.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kevin, I want to talk to you about it. Obviously, you're watching along with the rest of us. You're watching, hype for the U.S., but hype for Steph, and he has this amazing performance. And then Under Armour Curry brand drops the Curry 12s and the USA colorway.
He's got them on.
I mean, he's got them on right there. I mean, could you name a better time to drop a sneaker? Tell me about that and building on the success of the Olympics.
Well, you try to find the right, number one, Under Armour is all about innovation and product that, will give athletes those little edge. We say to provide you with a solution that you never knew you needed, and once you tried it, you couldn't imagine living without. So I can rattle this stuff off, but that means like the Curry outsole is giving him grip because that's one thing that Steph wanted is he could get his shot off a little bit faster. His team figured out he could score 2.3 more points per game and up that, and so we try to put the innovation there. But when you can match a great innovation with great style and the athlete's moment, and so that's what Steph did at the Olympics is one of those things which we couldn't have written or scripted it any better too. And then one thing is certain is that he's always going to come through. So we have that. So yes, and then the 12 leads to the 13, or the 12 leads to. We got other color drops and leads to a tour that we got coming up as well with more shoes coming.
Mm-hmm. And when you're looking forward, future success and things like that, obviously, we talked about it. So Under Armour is now a partner with USA Football, and you're going to be bringing that to LA 2028 as flag football enters, the Olympics for the first time. Talk to me about how that fits into the Olympic strategy.
Well, I think authenticity. Under Armour as a whole, we had 72 athletes, 26 countries, ended with 28 medals. This is 28 right here. I think the last one that came home.
Kelsey Plum?
Kelsey Plum won another one as well. So, this is where we want to be there for sports. So Under Armour is meant to be, one of the very few global brands that can show up in any athletic endeavor, on every court, any pitch, any field, and be seen as credible. And that's something that we refer to as we're a podium brand. We call ourselves a sports house. So we want to be in those moments, and we want to be outfitting athletes where it matters. And so, we were founded on field in the sport of football. And so football making a debut in LA is going to be super cool. It is going to be a really neat opportunity for us, especially as we look at in 28 of, that'll be the first year we'll be outfitting the flag football team there. So we'll see what kind of athletes, and we'll see who's going to be throwing the rock. But
we will definitely see that.
Have you ever played flag football?
I have. No, I'm watching my 6-year-old play now, so I think
you could use another one.
There you go. 10-year-old flag football 2028, maybe. Steph, you both had talked about it there, the global outreach of the Olympics. And, you've obviously been on the winning train before in the NBA. Does this feel different in when you're talking about the way that this impacts global business?
For sure. There's no bigger international stage than what we just experienced. Starting with being on the barge and opening ceremonies with all 590 plus, Team USA athletes across all the different sports, events, skills. And, just being in that environment, for me, I felt it. Like, I was a kid in the candy store taking pictures with everybody. Everyone to take pictures with us. And I'm like, make sure you introduce who you are, because I want to know, I want to educate myself.
What sport they were and all that.
And you feel like, how much passion there was from fan bases everywhere. And, the amount of reaction I got from that gold medal game and just what we were able to accomplish, how I played, that obviously is something I'll be talked about for a long time, but it drives exactly what Kevin was talking about, the things that kind of have to go right for it to happen, from, my product all the way to being able to celebrate it in different parts of the world. So it's definitely amazing, and I think we're going to capitalize off that momentum.
And that goes into the tour that you're talking about. Is it a global tour for the next few sneakers? Is that what you're talking about, Kevin?
It'll be the first time Steph will be over in Asia, doing a 4-cities tour there, starting in Chengdu, and we've got a colorway called the Pandu that's going to be dropping then as well, which is, Chengdu is where the pandas are in China. So it's going to be really exciting. The product will be terrific, but the way that Stefan's sort of received there is, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's been 5 years since we've been over to China as well. We've got a pretty big store base there, so it's something that the market's incredibly excited. I think the first day there, we had how many signups? I think, several million social media signups of people that are popping on Tencent, who's going to be one of our partners for the tour. But we'll be there. We'll meet you in Shanghai and see. And I remember we've done this before. And you got to remember, you're on a tour. It's like it's 24 hours a day. But what was that big mall we were in? We put you up against like some 6-year-old kid. Oh, yeah, and for whatever reason, Stephen woke up. And if you've ever seen Stephen Curry, I've never seen Stephen Curry not make basketball shots. It happens. So anyway, we'll make sure we get you sleep.
That part.
So you were a little jet lagged then?
Just a little bit. You're trying to obviously balance the work and the reason we're over there. Obviously, I'm still prepping for the next NBA season coming up at the end of the month. So, trying to do it all, obviously, and take advantage of this window of time to be, like you said, it's been 5 years since we've been over there, and this is international work we're trying to do, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, one of the things, I want to talk to you about as we talk about strategy and moving forward is you took a seat back from being CEO, and now you're back. Why was it important for you to step back in this role?
That's something which, we say at Under Armour, there's 4 things that make up our brand. Is number 1, we're about athletes. Number 2, we're about sports. Number 3, we're about innovation. Number 4, passion. And hopefully we can wrap some smarts and some strategy around that. And that's one thing which we've got a really incredible team. And what I'm watching being built in Baltimore right now is really special with the people side of it, but also, in the physical infrastructure too. We've got a new headquarters that's opening, in a town like Baltimore this November. 300,000 square foot. It'll be a LEED certified building. It'll be a new house to sort of contain it. It feels like we're starting a brand new chapter at UA. So the ability to come back and lead that is something. What a gift. Gratitude is something I've learned is, turning 52, and I feel like I've lived several chapters at this point and got some dog years on me. So hopefully we can apply all that wisdom and smarts and again, some of the great relationships that we have too, when you have, talent like Stephen and someone who's inspirational that can speak to the living, physical, walking manifestation of what it means to be the underdog, to have that, they didn't pick me, they didn't give me that chance. Hey, Virginia Tech. So it's like, and this is the things where Stephen is that underdog. And to know that, you can apply that rule of 10,000 hours. It's something that's very Under Armour. It speaks to the kid and the consumer, which is a lane that we think, Under Armour is that chip on the shoulder. We represent grit. It's from our hometown of Baltimore to the attitude we have when Stephen plays. So that's something that makes us really proud, and we're happy to go tell that story and inspire young kids all over the world.
Steph, when you come back together now, you've been partners in this business for a long time, and you're moving Curry brand forward. How do you envision this relationship going forward, especially, past your playing career and beyond?
Yeah, if you look at from 2013, when I had my first meeting in Charlotte with the Under Armour team, like the vision was to to build something unique and special to kind of reflect what I wanted in the basketball space. Under Armour basketball was babies at the time, and there's kind of just a white canvas of what do you want to build, and built off my signature journey over the course of the first 8 years, Curry brand launching in 2021, and then thinking about, okay, to your point, what is the legacy of this opportunity to, we call it change the game for good, and everything he just mentioned about, product and innovation being, the driving force of that. I want to bring people along, the ride with me. And so, obviously signing De'Aaron Fox last year was a big deal, especially as an active athlete, to have somebody that sees the same vision I have as an underdog who's trying to prove himself and take that next step. And he wants his, a product to do exactly what he needs to do to be the greatest basketball player he can be, but also has a vision of what he wants to do in the community as well. For me, that's a huge, huge deal.
That was NBA superstar Steph Curry, as well as Under Armour CEO Kevin Plank, talking with Vanessa Perdomo, Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent. They were on stage at Bloomberg Power Players in New York this month. Coming up, we've got more from Power Players. For my colleagues Michael Barr and Damian Sassower, I'm Scarlet Fu. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Scarlet Fu. Michael Barr and Damian Sassower will be back next week. It's a special edition of the show today featuring highlights from Bloomberg Power Players New York, a special event featuring panel discussions with top figures in the world of sports. For our next conversation, we stick with basketball, but this time with former NBA star Grant Hill. He is co-owner of the Atlanta Hawks, an investor in NBA Africa, and serves as managing director for USA Basketball. Grant Hill spoke to Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly at Bloomberg Power Players about the big win in the Summer Games for Team USA and basketball's growth around the world. Let's listen in on their conversation, starting with his thoughts on Team USA taking home the gold medal.
For us, it was gold or bust.
Yeah.
And you really felt that. You felt that pressure, particularly in the medal rounds. And it was unlike any pressure I've ever experienced. Steve Kerr, who was our head coach, and Steve Kerr has had a pretty illustrious career, 5 NBA finals as a player with Chicago and San Antonio. He's coached in 6 NBA finals, having won 4 with the Golden State Warriors. And he even acknowledged there was no pressure like that pressure.
Wow.
And so we just kept saying, we got 5 days and 3 games. Like, this is get through it. Let's coach to win. Let's play to win. But it was incredible. It was rewarding, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And to be able to embrace the hard, I think on the other side of that was incredibly fulfilling.
So it's got to be a moment, as a very savvy business person and investor, you have to look at this as a huge opportunity, not just for USA basketball, for global basketball as well. You're a co-owner of the Atlanta Hawks. You're deeply involved in the game. You're an investor in NBA Africa. What's the business case, or how strong is the business case for global basketball at this point, especially given some of the talent that's emerging? But how does this play out on the money side?
That's a great point. First of all, the impact of the Olympics and basketball, 2 things. One, the '84 Olympics, when here in Los Angeles, coached by Bob Knight, Michael Jordan was about to enter the NBA. That inspired me. Like, watching that, being engrossed in the whole Olympics, Carl Lewis, Mary Lou Retton, but watching that team, like, I thought that I want to do that. I was 11 years old. I dabbled in a number of sports, and like a lot of kids, I had that dream, but it inspired me. Then fast forward, 92, the Dream Team, and really kind of inspired the entire world. And the game now, the success of that team and the success of David Stern and Adam Silver and countless others, like, it's a global game. 30% of the NBA now are foreign-born players. Our most recent MVPs have all been international players. I can go all over the world, and thankfully I've had the opportunity to do that, and people identify me with the game of basketball. And, 25 years ago, that might not have been the case. And so you talk about, NBA Africa and sort of that new opportunity there and the investment in the growth of the game. It's just staggering to me. And so to have this world stage where everybody is watching the Olympics, and basketball is one of those signature events, along with track and field and women's gymnastics and others. And then to have, LeBron James, I don't know if there was another athlete, with all due respect to the number of great athletes who were all there from all over the world, but I don't know if there's anyone that was as popular or as famous or as celebrated as a LeBron James. And so all of that focus on them, it will have an impact, much like the 84 team did to my generation, and I think much like the Dream Team in 92 did. And so it continues to move the needle. You see the new media rights deal that was just agreed upon between the NBA and some of the old and new media partners. The business of basketball is in a great place. And I believe that our Olympic experience, our success, will play and continue to play a big role in that.
That was former NBA star Grant Hill speaking with Jason Kelly, Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent at Bloomberg's Power Players Live in New York earlier this month. If you missed any of those conversations, hear them on demand now on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Now we pivot to another special event in New York for a very important cause. This past Wednesday, we commemorated the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. One firm, Canter Fitzgerald, lost 658 employees in the attacks. Since then, the company began the Canter Fitzgerald Relief Fund. It's a not-for-profit charity focused on giving financial support to families affected by natural disasters, terrorism, and other emergencies. To mark this day, more than a dozen celebrities, including several top athletes, were on the Canter Fitzgerald trading floor. They were calling clients to raise money for that cause and their own charities. Bloomberg's Sonali Basak was there, and she sat down with a few of those athletes, starting with former New York Yankees outfielder Nick Swisher, who spoke about a charity that he's particularly passionate about, the American Heart Association.
Think about it. 350,000 cardiac arrests happen each year outside of hospitals, and 90% of those usually result in a death. So at the end of the day, being able to have a superpower like CPR is available. To be able to go on the website at heart.org/nation and be able to watch a 2-minute video, gain that sort of knowledge, and being able to be a lifesaver is absolutely humongous. So for myself, to be able to be here and learning that CPR, and hopefully one of these days, if somebody needs it, being able to have that knowledge under my belt is such an obvious.
Well, you were telling me that the cause has become pretty personal to you.
Yeah, I just think in general, just with all the heart diseases, all the things that can happen. If we don't have that, we're not going anywhere. So for myself, just to be able to be here, repping the American Heart Association with my best friend Fisher Pence, man, it's been an honor for me to be here, especially on an amazing day like today.
I've got to say, I've been pretty amused watching you go from the field to a trading floor. You were all over this trading floor looking to raise money. Do you see another future?
Of course. I don't know. Obviously, I feel like I'm the team mascot. I get a vest every year. This is kind of one of those days where I look forward to every year. And being able to show up and do what I can to help and give back is obviously the greatest thing I think somebody can do. I still wish I could be on the field, kind of changing people's lives and making people smile that way. But if I can still come here to the floor, put a smile on people's faces, maybe with my energy, bring them a little cup of coffee, then that's exactly what I want to do.
That was World Series champion, former New York Yankee Nick Swisher speaking with our very own Sonali Basak this past week at Canter Fitzgerald, part of the firm's annual fundraising event commemorating the September 11th attacks. New York Rangers goaltender Henrik Lundqvist and Hall of Famer was there as well. Here he is with Sonali talking about why being at Canter each year to mark this day is important to him.
I think ever since I moved to New York City back in 2005, you can feel the importance of this day, obviously, and I want to do whatever I can to honor people that was affected by this day. And Canter, for example, they do such an incredible job of supporting so many great charities and try to make something positive out of this.
You are a true story of resilience in a lot of ways yourself after having open heart surgery. What's next? How do you redefine Henrik Lundqvist post-Rangers?
You know what? Throughout sports, it was a lot about achieving, try to win, try to get better. I think what's driving me the most right now is having fun, being inspired, having the right type of people around me. I love my work at MSG. Again, meeting so many incredible people, but also all these different partnerships that I work with. Revolution Race, my fragrance, Next Chapter, or Porsche.
So what about the Rangers? Yeah. There are a lot of questions out there on what it would take for the Rangers to really make it up and to make it into the Stanley Cup finals. What do you expect this season?
Yeah, it's always an exciting time. September training camp starts. I remember the feeling. You've been away for the summer, players come back, and you look at last year. It was a great season for the Rangers. They were so consistent throughout the regular season. They had a great run in the playoffs. They were only a few wins away from the finals, right? And when you're that close, it's important to evaluate the right way. There may be tweaks here and there, but you're not that far off.
Henrik Lundqvist, New York Rangers goaltender and Hall of Famer, with our very own Sonali Basak as we remember 9/11 at Canter Fitzgerald this past week. And while the reason for the occasion is heavy, the mood on the trading floor was not somber at all, as celebrities and fan favorites joined in on the trading action and, of course, raised money for important causes. Former New York Giants star receiver Victor Cruz was there, and I actually got a chance to talk with him about his experiences on the trading floor.
It's going well here on the floor. There's a lot of energy, a lot of things going on, a lot of different celebrities making their way through, and we're making some money. I don't have a full tally just yet, but I know I've been making a bunch of trades and raising some money for not only Canter Fitzgerald, but for the Victor Cruz Foundation as well.
Right, and I know that celebrities like you are asked to kind of fulfill some of the orders. Can you give us a sense of what people are buying or selling? Is there a lot of talk of, say, NVIDIA or the Trump Media Company coming up?
I actually can't tell you that. I have no idea, to be honest. I know that I've just been making some solid trades, and it's always interesting when you're just throwing $20 million, $30 million around like it's nothing. It's always a fun time yelling those numbers out.
That was former New York Giants superstar receiver Victor Cruz. And it wasn't just New York sports legends in attendance either. Former New England Patriots superstar tight end and, of course, a frequent Super Bowl champion, Rob Gronkowski was also there, and he spoke to Sonali Basak.
Canter Fitzgerald just does such a great job remembering those that were fallen, that are deceased from the 9/11 event. So it's just an amazing tradition what Canter Fitzgerald is doing just to remember everyone, that has passed away, and just bringing awareness to that situation and just raising money for great causes out there as well. And we're actually raising money for my foundation as well, too, the Gronk Nation Youth Foundation, which is really cool.
At the end of the day, too, what's been interesting is watching you and many other celebrities here placing trades. What are you thinking about in terms of your career now after football? Well, you seem to be quite the businessman.
Yes, I am quite the businessman, that's for sure. I'm doing a lot of things out there. My favorite opportunity is a new salad joint, new salad venture that I've invested into. I'm a co-founder, and it's actually just started in the Florida area, in the Tampa geography. We got 3 stores now, and we're going to be just expanding rapidly. But also here, I want to bring the stock market back. So I'm here at Canter Fitzgerald to do some trades. I want to do the biggest trades of the day and bring that stock market so it's just booming back, back up to the sky.
Rob Gronkowski having a good time on the training floor at Canter Fitzgerald during the firm's annual fundraising event, speaking with Sonali Basak. Gronk was one of the many athletes and celebrities who joined Canter Fitzgerald in marking the September 11th attacks for a day of fundraising. You can find full versions of these conversations and more on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. Find that on Apple, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And subscribe so you never miss a highlight interview from Bloomberg. That does it for this week's edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports. For my colleagues Michael Barr and Damian Sassower, I'm Scarlet Fu. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.